My daughter excluded me from her wedding until she discovered I owned the venue. My hands trembled slightly as I lowered the phone, the screen still glowing with the family group photo from Ella's bridal shower. Everyone was there. My sisters. My nieces. Even Karen, my ex-husband's new wife, smiling with her arm around Ella like she was the mother of the bride. Everyone was there. Except me. There had been no call, no invitation, no explanation. Just silence. A month earlier, I'd overheard Ella's engagement news from a neighbor, not from my daughter. "Congratulations," Mrs. Langford had said, leaning over the fence with her gardening gloves still on. "Ella's getting married, right? I saw the announcement on Facebook. Beautiful couple. Hold on a moment before we move forward. Let us know where in the world you're watching from. And if you're loving these stories, don't forget to hit subscribe. Tomorrow's episode is going to be absolutely mind-blowing." That was how I found out. Not from Ella, not from her father, from a neighbor pulling weeds. At first, I told myself, it was just a delay. That maybe the invitation had been lost in the mail. Maybe Ella had meant to call. Maybe she was just overwhelmed with the planning. I tried to believe that. I really did. But the photos made it clear. There was no mistake. I hadn't been forgotten. I had been excluded. The same hands that held her as a newborn, that braided her hair every morning before school, that helped her study for finals and packed her boxes when she moved into her first apartment, those hands were no longer welcome. My name wasn't even mentioned. I sat down at the kitchen table, the familiar creak of the chair beneath me grounding me in place. I stared at the photo again. My sisters were all wearing floral dresses. The living room looked like it had been professionally decorated. Pink and white balloons, a banner reading "From Miss to Mrs." My sister Beth held up a champagne flute next to Ella, both laughing like they shared a secret. And maybe they did. My stomach churned, not from jealousy. From humiliation. I wasn't even told. I didn't want to call her. I didn't want to beg to be part of her wedding. But the ache in my chest wouldn't stop pulsing. 3 days later, I caved. I waited until after dinner and dialed her number. It rang twice before she answered, her voice chipper, like nothing had happened. "Hi, Mom," I swallowed hard. "Hey, sweetheart. I saw the pictures." A pause, then a long breath on the other end. "Oh, right. I didn't know you were having the shower already. I thought maybe—" "It was kind of last minute," she said quickly. "And it was just a small thing, mostly my friends, and a few aunts." I clenched the edge of the table. "I'm your mother." "I know." "Then why wasn't I there?" She hesitated. "Mom, I love you, but the vibe we're going for with the wedding and the events, it's a little more modern, more curated. It's just a different generation, I blinked, stunned. "Are you saying I don't fit your wedding aesthetic?" "No, I'm not saying that. I didn't want things to feel awkward or forced. You and Dad barely talk. And Karen has been a big part of helping me plan everything. It's complicated." "It's not complicated," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "It's cruel." Another pause. "You're making this dramatic." I felt like I'd been slapped. "I paid for your college. I helped you through every job change. I sent you money last year for your rent when you lost your second job. That has nothing to do with this," she snapped. "It has everything to do with this." Her tone flattened. "I'm not trying to hurt you, Mom. I'm just trying to have the day I want. That's all. And that day doesn't include me?" Silence. I let the quiet stretch out. Then I hung up. I didn't cry. Not right away. But later that night, when I got up to get a glass of water, I walked past the shelf in the hallway. There was a frame with Ella's preschool picture. Missing front tooth, pigtails, messy glitter shirt. I'd taken that photo. On my old Nikon camera the day she'd won the school award for kindness. I picked it up, stared at it for a moment, and put it face down. I didn't sleep much that night. By morning, the numbness had settled in. I told myself I'd let it go. I told myself I wouldn't be bitter. But something in me had cracked. It wasn't just the shower. It was everything. How she only called when she needed something. How she skipped my birthday last year. How she praised Karen on Instagram for being her rock, while I sat at home trying to understand what I'd done wrong. I gave everything I had to my daughter. My time, my money, my attention. I showed up for every recital, every school conference, every heartbreak. And now I wasn't even good enough for a wedding photo? I went on with my week pretending nothing had changed. I cleaned the house. I cooked. I walked to the market and smiled at people who had no idea what was happening, but the ache stayed. A week later, I was at the bank, going through my safe deposit documents, when I noticed a file tucked in the back. It was labeled Regency Hall, Acquisition, 2014. I paused. Regency Hall. The name sounded familiar. I opened the folder. That's when I remembered. 10 years ago, after my husband passed, I had invested part of his life insurance into a portfolio managed by an old friend. One of the properties in the portfolio was a small but elegant venue outside of town, Regency Hall. I flipped through the documents. The LLC was still active, and I still held majority ownership. I pulled out my phone and typed the name into Google, and there it was. Ella and David. Wedding date reserved. Regency Hall. June 22nd. My fingers tightened around the phone. They were getting married at my venue. They had booked my property. She didn't know. Or maybe she did. Maybe she never thought I'd notice. But I had. And now she had no idea just how close she was to learning what it feels like to be treated like an afterthought. I didn't want revenge. I didn't want a scene. But for the first time in a long time, I had the upper hand. And I wasn't going to let it go. The next morning, I called the management company that oversaw the operations at Regency Hall. It had been nearly a decade since I reviewed the structure, but the details came back to me easily. The property was owned under a holding company I had established, Tamarisk Ventures. I was listed as the primary stakeholder. The operating contracts were managed locally by a woman named Sarah Nolan, who I had only met once, years ago, when I signed the last renewal. I asked for an appointment to review current bookings and contracts. Sarah was polite on the phone, almost cheerful. "Of course, Ms. Reynolds. Would tomorrow afternoon work for you? We can walk through the property and I'll have the booking ledger ready." "That works," I said. "Please don't mention my visit to anyone. I'd prefer discretion." "No problem at all." When I arrived at Regency Hall the next day, the parking lot was nearly empty. The building hadn't changed. Clean white pillars, trimmed hedges, elegant glass doors. The same venue I had quietly purchased to create some future financial stability after Charles died. I hadn't stepped foot there since the acquisition. I just let it do its job in the background, bringing in modest rental income, managed by professionals. I had never once thought it would intersect with my personal life in any significant way. Until now. Sarah greeted me in the small front office. She was in her late 30s, neatly dressed, with the kind of practiced friendliness I recognized from years of customer service. "Come on in, Ms. Reynolds," she said, gesturing me toward a conference room with a laptop already open. She gave me a rundown of upcoming events, birthdays, 2 corporate luncheons, a retirement party. And there it was, right between a medical association dinner and a summer gala. June 22nd, Ella Reynolds and David Carlson wedding. I looked at the screen a long time before speaking. Did Ella make the reservation herself? Sarah tapped a few keys. Actually, the initial inquiry was made by someone named Karen Reynolds. Then the contract was finalized by David Carlson. He paid the deposit. I blinked. Karen. So not only was I excluded from my own daughter's wedding, but the woman who replaced me in my husband's life had been the one coordinating things. "I see," I said evenly. Sarah hesitated. "I wasn't aware Ella was your daughter. If I had known—" "It doesn't matter," I said. "You've done everything properly." We sat in silence for a moment. Then I asked the question I'd come there for. Does the contract include a clause allowing for special event oversight or modification by the property owner? Sarah nodded. It does, actually. The original agreement included a provision that allowed the majority stakeholder to review or override any material use of the venue in the case of conflict or misuse. I'd like a copy of that clause, I said. She printed the file and slid it across the table. The language was clear. I had the right to amend or cancel any event, especially if there was a conflict of interest or risk to reputation. It wasn't something I planned to use frivolously, but it was there. It meant I had options. Is there anything wrong with the event? Sarah asked gently. No, I said. Not yet. I thanked her and left without scheduling any changes. I didn't want drama, not yet. But I wasn't going to be erased so quietly. That night, I sat in my living room and opened my laptop. I went through my emails, searching for anything from Ella. The last message she had sent me was almost 5 months ago. A short, "Thanks, Mom," after I wired her $800 for a car repair she claimed she needed for work. No follow-up, no check-in, no birthday message. I scrolled further back. There were years of messages like that. Requests for help, money, contacts, emergency babysitting when her friend needed help, emotional support when her old roommate stole her deposit. But never anything just for me. It was like I had only existed in her life to fill in the gaps. When did it change? I kept asking myself that. I wasn't perfect. I had made mistakes, like every parent. But I had never turned my back on her. Even after the divorce, even after her father left and married Karen, I had always stayed close. I was there when she cried after her first breakup. I helped her move into her college dorm, and then again when she got her first job out of state. And now she couldn't even look me in the eye and tell me I wasn't invited to her wedding? No phone call, no explanation, just silence and pretty pictures for everyone else to see. The next day, I decided to say nothing. I wouldn't confront her. I wouldn't ask to be included. I wanted to see just how far she would take this, whether she would have the courage, or the cruelty, to carry this exclusion all the way through. The week passed slowly. Then, on Saturday, I received an envelope in the mail. Not from Ella, but from my sister Beth. Inside were 2 printed photographs, one of Ella and Karen standing in front of a wedding dress boutique, holding hands and laughing. The other, a group shot from the bridal brunch, with the caption, "To the woman who made this all possible. Love you, Mom." The woman in the middle wasn't me, it was Karen. I stared at the photos, my hands growing cold. Beth had included a note, probably with good intentions. "Thought you might like to see these." Ella looked stunning. The brunch was beautiful. "Hope you're doing well. Maybe we can meet for coffee soon?" I crumpled the note and threw it in the trash. There was no anger in me, just a kind of cold clarity. This wasn't about wedding aesthetics. This wasn't about convenience. Ella had made a decision. She had replaced me, and now she was celebrating that replacement. Proudly, publicly. But what she didn't know, what none of them knew, was that the venue they had chosen wasn't just another pretty building. It was mine, purchased with money I had earned, with years of sacrifice and planning. It was a piece of my life they had walked into, uninvited. And soon, I would decide exactly what to do with that knowledge. The next Monday morning, I drove back to Regency Hall. I hadn't told anyone, not Ella, not Beth, not even Sarah. I needed to be in that space, not as an owner on paper, not as a name in a contract, but as a presence. I needed to see the room where my daughter was about to celebrate her future without me. The staff was setting up for a corporate breakfast, but Sarah greeted me at the entrance with a surprised smile. "Back again?" she asked. "Do you need something?" "Just a walkthrough," I replied. She didn't ask questions. She simply nodded and handed me a key card that gave me access to the main ballroom and prep areas. I appreciated that she didn't pry. Sarah was competent and respectful. I'd chosen her team well, even if I hadn't realized how much that decision would matter later. I walked into the ballroom, now mostly empty aside from rows of chairs stacked along the wall and round tables waiting to be dressed. I stood in the middle of the room and closed my eyes. This was where Ella would say her vows. This was where Karen would be smiling in the front row, probably in a matching outfit. This was where I would not be. Not even a passing mention. Not even a name on the program. For a few minutes, I let myself imagine it. The ceremony unfolding. Without me, the applause, the dancing, the toasts. I opened my eyes. No, I wasn't going to stand outside this time. Not when the floor beneath them belonged to me. As I walked slowly toward the catering prep area, I noticed a new floral sample arrangement on one of the tables. Pale pink roses, white peonies, eucalyptus leaves. There was a clipboard next to it labeled, Ella and David, Final Decor Meeting, May the 2nd, 2:30 p.m. It was already on the calendar. That meant Ella would be coming here. To my building. In less than 2 days. I stayed still for a moment, unsure how to feel. But it was clear. She didn't know I owned the venue. There's no way she would have continued, planning her wedding here otherwise. And now, I had a decision to make. Later that evening, I reviewed the lease contract again. Clause 9.2 stated that the owner, me, had the right to review and restrict access to venue operations, including but not limited to layout modifications, special guest accommodations, and any reputational concerns related to scheduled events. It wasn't a stretch. If the wedding of my own daughter was deliberately excluding me and using a property in my name to do it, I could easily argue reputational concern. I didn't need to cancel anything, but I didn't have to stay silent either. That night, I barely slept. I wasn't plotting revenge. I wasn't trying to ruin Ella's day, but I couldn't pretend anymore. I wasn't going to be erased from a place I built. The next morning, I contacted Sarah and asked her to add a note in the wedding file. Owner requests a full walkthrough and final layout approval prior to event setup. No exceptions. She called me 20 minutes later. Are you sure you want to do this? Yes, I said. I won't interrupt their day, but I want the couple and their planner to be aware of who owns this space. I have the right to be acknowledged. I'll add it to the file, she said. You want me to be present when they come for the decor meeting? No, I said. Let them see it for themselves. I hung up and took a long breath. This wasn't a threat. It was a quiet message. I see what you're doing, and I'm not going to let you do it silently. That afternoon, Beth called. I let it go to voicemail. When I finally listened, her voice sounded cautious. Hey, I hope you're okay. I know you probably didn't appreciate the photos I sent, but I thought maybe you'd want to see them. Ella's really excited, and she's doing what she thinks is best, I guess. Anyway, call me if you feel like talking. What she thinks is best. That phrase kept echoing in my mind. The next day arrived faster than I expected. At 2:15 p.m., I parked across the street from Regency Hall and watched from inside my car. A silver SUV pulled up at 2:29. Ella stepped out of the passenger seat, wearing a pale blue blouse and cream slacks. Karen followed, dressed a little too perfectly in a coral dress and heels, like she thought someone might be taking photos. They were both laughing. I didn't follow them in. I didn't need to. 10 minutes later, Sarah sent me a text. They saw the file. Karen looked confused. Ella went very quiet. They didn't say anything to me directly. Just asked if you'd be attending the event. I said you hadn't confirmed that. Then they left early. That was enough for now. I didn't need to make a scene. But I wasn't invisible anymore. The next morning, my phone rang. It was Ella. I let it go to voicemail. A few minutes later, another call. This time I answered. Her voice was tight. Mom? Yes? Did you know the venue was yours? I said nothing. Why didn't you say anything? Why didn't you? She went quiet. Then, this isn't how I wanted things to be. No, I said. It's how you made them. Another silence. I didn't mean to hurt you, she said. I didn't think you'd want to be part of it. You and Karen, this was never about Karen, I said. This was about you. You didn't invite me because you didn't want me there. That's not true. Yes, it is. She sounded like she might cry, but I didn't fill the silence for her this time. Finally, she spoke again. I didn't know how to make it work. You and Dad barely speak. You and Karen. I didn't ask to sit next to her. I didn't ask to make a speech. I didn't even ask to be honored. I asked to be your mother. That's all. I heard her breathing on the other end. I can't change the decisions I made, she whispered. No, I said. You can't. But I don't want to fight with you. I just want peace. Then stop pretending this is peaceful, I said. Call things what they are. Another pause. Then quietly, are you going to cancel the venue? No. She let out a shaky breath of relief. But I will be there, I said. What do you mean? I'll be there. I'll be in the building. You won't see me. I won't interrupt, but I'll be present. I won't be excluded from my own space. You don't have to acknowledge me. You don't even have to look at me, but I'll be there. Her voice tightened again. That feels cruel. I almost laughed. Does it? She didn't respond. I ended the call. That evening, I emailed Sarah and confirmed, owner will be on premises during the event. No interference, no disruption. I'll observe from the staff gallery. Make sure my chair is placed accordingly. I wasn't going to ruin her day, but I wasn't going to be erased from it either. The week leading up to the wedding passed in fragments. I didn't talk to Ella. Again. She didn't call. I received no text, no message. Nothing from Beth either. It was like they had all silently agreed I was either no longer a problem or no longer relevant. But I stayed firm on my decision. I wouldn't cancel the wedding. I wouldn't interfere with her vows, her guests, her moment, but I would be there. Not as a mother invited, not as a guest honored, but as a woman who had spent her entire life giving and who was no longer going to disappear quietly when it was convenient for others. I reviewed the venue schedule 3 times. The main ballroom was blocked off all Friday night for final prep. The ceremony would take place at noon on Saturday, followed by an indoor reception. I emailed Sarah on Wednesday. I'd like to speak with the event coordinator, privately. She replied within the hour, confirmed. Her name is Madeline. She'll be on site Friday morning at 9 a.m., so I went. When I arrived at Regency Hall that morning, Sarah met me at the door, professional as always, but clearly aware of the tension surrounding my presence. She's already in the ballroom, Sarah said quietly, setting up sample tables. Do you want me to stay? No, I said. Give us a few minutes. I walked in slowly. Madeline, mid-30s, headset on, clipboard in hand, was adjusting a floral centerpiece on one of the round tables. When she turned and saw me, her expression flickered, polite confusion, then recognition. You must be Ms. Reynolds, she said, walking over. Sarah mentioned you might stop by. I own this building, I replied. I want to make a few clarifications. Of course, she said. Everything's been going smoothly so far. It will continue to, I said. As long as we understand each other. She paused. Okay. I'm not here to cancel anything, I said. But I'm invoking the clause in the contract that gives me full control over layout approval. I'll be present the day of the event. Quietly. Unseen. But present. I understand, she said. You're not on the guest list, though. You want to be added? No. I looked her straight in the eye. I'm not asking to be a guest. I'm asking to be acknowledged, even if it's just by myself. And I'm requesting that a chair be placed in the staff observation gallery. I can do that, she said. Would you like it near the back or high angle? Balcony view. I don't need to be seen. I just need to see. Madeline nodded and jotted something on her clipboard. One more thing, I added. I want the program revised. She looked up quickly. The program? I understand I'm not listed. I won't force my way in. But I won't have my replacement listed as mother of the bride. Karen Reynolds is not her mother. You list her as family friend or hostess. Nothing more. Madeline hesitated. They already printed, then reprint. She nodded slowly. Understood. I handed her a card. Any questions, email me directly. I won't be reachable by phone." She accepted the card without further comment. I walked out of that ballroom without raising my voice, without causing a scene, without speaking to Ella or Karen. But the rules had changed. I had drawn a line, not out of spite, but out of self-respect. That night, I received an email from Sarah. Layout changes updated. Program adjustment sent to print. Chair reserved in gallery as requested. I stared at the screen for a while. There was no joy in it, no victory. But there was relief, small, measured, quiet. Friday evening, the parking lot at Regency Hall was packed. Caterers, decor teams, photographers testing lighting. Everything buzzed with movement. I parked far in the back, stepped inside through the vendor entrance, and went unnoticed by everyone. I made my way to the upstairs gallery, where staff typically observed events or took breaks. My chair was there, tucked behind the main aisle, facing the entire ballroom. From there I could see it all. The stage, the floral arch, the candles, the reserved rows. I sat for a few minutes in silence. Then I left. Saturday morning, I arrived. Exactly 1 hour before the ceremony. Sarah met me at the door, led me through the back corridor, and nodded silently before turning away. No words needed. The music started 30 minutes later. I heard it faintly from upstairs, soft piano chords, the kind of instrumental choices brides pick after hours of Pinterest scrolling. The guests filled the room below. I stayed seated in the gallery. From my position, I saw Ella walk down the aisle. Her dress was long-sleeved, fitted lace, very traditional. She looked beautiful. Not because of the gown, not because of the flowers, just because she always did. I hadn't seen her in person in over 2 months. She looked forward the whole time. She didn't look up. David stood under the floral arch, hands clasped, smiling nervously. Karen sat in the second row. Not the first. I made sure of that. The ceremony lasted 23 minutes. There was no mention of me. There was no seat left open, but I was there. I watched her say her vows. I watched her begin the next chapter of her life. And then, when the applause came and everyone stood to cheer, I stood too. I walked out silently, down the back hallway, through the vendor door, into my car. I didn't cry. I didn't smile. I just drove home. That night, around 10 p.m., my phone buzzed. A message from Beth. "I saw you." I didn't reply. 10 minutes later, another. "You did the right thing. You didn't let her erase you." Still, I said nothing. I wasn't looking for praise. The next morning, I received a third message. This time, from Ella. No greeting, no apology, just 5 words. "Were you there yesterday? Watching?" I stared at the message for a long time. Then I typed, "Yes." I didn't explain. She didn't ask more. I set the phone down, walked to the window, and sat there quietly, letting the morning light fall across the floor. 3 days after the wedding, I received a letter in the mail. Not an email, not a text. A physical envelope, hand-addressed, with Ella's name in the corner. I stood in my kitchen for a while before opening it, trying to predict the tone. Would it be remorse? Anger? Justification? It wasn't long. 1 page, handwritten. "Mom, I don't know how to start this. I know you were there. I saw your name in the logbook. I saw the program had changed. I know that was you. I don't know what I expected. I thought you'd get mad and try to ruin the day. But you didn't. You just watched. And now I don't know how to talk to you. I'm not ready to say much else. But I guess I just wanted you to know I know." Ella, I reread it 3 times. It didn't say sorry. It didn't acknowledge anything specific. But it was more than she had given me in months. I folded the letter, placed it in a drawer with the few cards I'd saved from her childhood, and said nothing in return. Not yet. Later. That week, Sarah reached out with a routine update on the post-event logistics. I told her to proceed with the cleanup and finalize the vendor payments. But before ending the call, she hesitated. "There's something else," she said. Not, "Sure, if you want to hear it, tell me." Karen stopped by the venue 2 days after the wedding, alone. She asked about you. I didn't say much, just that you had been present. She got very quiet. Then she said, and I quote, "This isn't over." I didn't react. Sarah continued, "I didn't respond. I just nodded and walked away." "She has no legal grounds," I said. "She doesn't represent the couple. She's not a client." "I know," Sarah said. "Just wanted you to be aware." I thanked her and ended the call. That night, I received a voicemail. Karen. Her voice was flat, but with a tone she clearly intended to sound measured and authoritative. "Claire, I know you were at the wedding. I know what you did. And I want to make something clear. That day was not about you. You had no business inserting yourself. I don't care what you own or what legal tricks you use to push your way in. Ella made a choice, a clear one. You've made this entire thing harder, for her and for everyone else. I don't want to involve lawyers, but if you continue interfering in their life, I will let it go." I replayed the message once, then deleted it. 2 days later, I met with my attorney. Not to retaliate, to protect myself. We reviewed the property agreements, the contracts with the event company, and every documented communication I had sent or received. "Everything you did was well within your rights," she said. "Nothing here even remotely crosses into interference. If anything, your restraint is commendable." "I just want it documented," I said, "in case she escalates." "Understood," she replied. I left the office with copies of all the paperwork in a sealed envelope, placed them in my home safe, and moved on with my week until the next call came. "Beth, Claire," she said, not even bothering with a hello. "Karen is telling people you tried to sabotage the wedding, that you showed up uninvited and caused a scene, that the program change was your way of humiliating Ella." I stayed quiet. "I told her to stop," Beth continued. "But she's talking to anyone who will listen. Church friends, some old family acquaintances. She even called Aunt Marla." "I expected this," I said. "Karen needs a villain. And you're just letting her spread this garbage? For now. You shouldn't. I know." After the call, I logged into my Facebook account. I hadn't posted anything in nearly a year. I avoided drama. But this wasn't about starting something. It was about finishing something. I drafted a short message. "I've stayed quiet long enough. I wasn't invited to my only daughter's wedding. I wasn't told I was unwelcome. I was just excluded." Silently. I own the venue where the wedding took place. That's not a flex. It's a fact. I didn't interfere. I didn't cause a scene. I sat alone in the balcony. Quiet. Because I was never going to ruin her day. But I wasn't going to be erased from it either. Say what you want, but say it with the whole truth. Claire Reynolds. I clicked post. Nothing fancy. No hashtags. No tags. Just the truth. Within hours, comments poured in. Some people were shocked. Others offered private messages of support. A few mutuals tried to defend Ella, but none had a real argument when I shared a photo of the program, one with the title Hostess next to Karen's name. No mother of the bride listed anywhere. Karen didn't respond publicly, but I knew she'd seen it. I knew it because she blocked me 2 days later. Ella still hadn't replied to the letter, or the post. But she didn't block me. She didn't comment either. And that silence, somehow, was louder. The following weekend, I drove to a small bed and breakfast in the mountains. No phone, no email, just a few days of space. On the second night, I received a voicemail from a number I didn't recognize. Ella. "Mom, I saw what you posted. I don't know how to feel about it, but I know you didn't lie. I didn't want things to be like this. I didn't know how to fix it once I'd made those decisions. I wanted control over my wedding, and I thought pushing you away would make it easier, but it didn't. It just made it emptier. I know I messed up. I don't know what happens now, but I wanted you to hear my voice. Not just read a message. I'm sorry." I didn't cry. I didn't feel relief. Not right away. I just listened. And listened again. Then I saved the voicemail. Not because I forgave her yet, but because it was the first time in a long time that she sounded like my daughter again. I waited 3 full days before calling Ella back. Not because I wanted to punish her. I just needed to be sure I wasn't responding from a place of rawness. I had to know I wouldn't fold at the sound of her voice, that I wouldn't fall into old patterns and offer comfort before asking for clarity. When I called, she answered on the second ring. "Hi, Mom." Her voice was quiet, tense. "Hi." Silence stretched between us. Not cold, just unfamiliar. We weren't used to speaking as equals. Not since she was a teenager. Maybe not even then. "I didn't expect you to call," she said finally. "You left a message," I replied. "I heard it." She exhaled. "Yeah, I believe you meant what you said," I told her. "But I need you to understand something. I didn't show up to make a statement. I showed up because I was tired of being treated like I didn't exist. And I wasn't going to let that continue, not in a place that bears my name on the deed." "I know," she said. "No, you heard. That's not the same thing." I waited. "I get it," she said quietly. "Not all of it. Not the way you feel. It. But I understand more now. You didn't just exclude me from a party, Ella. You wrote me out of one of the biggest events of your life. And I would have accepted it if you'd told me directly. I would have respected your decision. But you didn't even give me that." Her voice wavered. "I didn't know how. Every time I thought about calling, I didn't know what to say. So I said nothing. You chose Karen." "I didn't choose her over you," she insisted, then paused. "Okay, maybe I did, but it wasn't about love. It was about control, about keeping things simple, about not dealing with how complicated our family really is. You can't control what's already broken, Ella," I said. "You just made it quieter. That's not the same as fixing it." Another silence. "Did I ruin it forever?" she asked. "No, I meant it." But I didn't rush to soften the weight of that answer either. "But I'm not going to chase a relationship that depends on me shrinking to fit into your comfort zone. I wouldn't ask you to." "You already did," I said. She didn't argue. "I'm willing to talk," I continued. "But I'm not pretending we can go back to how things were." "Neither am I." There was a pause. Then she said something I didn't expect. "I canceled the honeymoon." That caught me off guard. Why? Because I couldn't celebrate, knowing I handled things this way. I needed to sit with it, with what I did, with what I allowed. "I never asked you to cancel anything." "I know," she said. "That's exactly why I did." I said nothing. She filled the silence. "David understands. He told me to do what I needed. So I've been here, at home, thinking." I looked out the window, watching the wind push the trees along the edge of my lawn. It had rained that morning. Everything looked clearer. "What do you want now?" I asked her. "I want to meet," she said. "In person, just us. Somewhere neutral. Not your house, not mine. Maybe the park?" "Which one?" "Langston. Near the bench where we used to feed the ducks." That bench hadn't crossed my mind in years, but I remembered it clearly. It was where I'd once sat with her after her first serious breakup, where I had offered her a tissue, and she had cried until her face turned blotchy. I didn't say anything back then either. I just stayed. "All right," I said. "Tomorrow at 4. "Okay," she said. "I'll be there." When I arrived the next day, she was already seated. No makeup, hair tied back, wearing an old sweatshirt I vaguely recognized from her college days. She stood when she saw me. I didn't hug her. She didn't try. We sat on the bench together. The air was crisp. The ducks were gone, probably out of season. But the pond was still. "I'm not going to list excuses," she said. "You know what I did. I know what I did." I didn't respond. I waited. I let Karen shape more than just the wedding. I let her shape my memory of you. And I think I wanted her to, because it was easier than dealing with how complicated our history really is. "You're an adult," I said. "Your choices are yours. But don't rewrite me just because I didn't always fit the story you wanted." She nodded. "I told myself that you were dramatic, that you made things difficult, that you brought problems into every event. But now I see you were the only one keeping things from falling apart. That's not praise, Ella. That's observation. And it comes 10 years too late. I know. We sat in silence for a long time. She finally pulled something from her bag, a small envelope. I asked the photographer to print this separately. She didn't use it in the main album. I opened it, a single photo, from the wedding ceremony, taken from above, from the gallery. I was seated in the far corner, barely visible. You weren't invisible, she said quietly. I saw you. And even though I tried to block it out, you were the only one in that room who made me feel like I'd done something wrong. I stared at the photo for a moment, then slipped it back into the envelope. I don't need your guilt, I said. I need your honesty. I don't know how to be fully honest yet, she admitted. But I'm trying. That's a start. I'm not asking to be forgiven. Good, I said. Forgiveness isn't owed, it's earned. Looked down at her hands. We didn't talk much after that. We sat for almost 30 minutes, each with our own thoughts. And just before she stood to leave, she turned to me. Will you let me come to your house for dinner sometime? I'll let you know, I said. It wasn't a yes, but it wasn't a no. She nodded, adjusted her bag, and walked away. I stayed, on that bench for a while longer, not out of sentiment, just to think. Later that week, I went back to Regency Hall. The staff was prepping for a winter formal. Sarah greeted me with a smile. Nice to see you, she said. Things settling down? Maybe, I said. She walked with me toward the main floor. The tables were already dressed. By the way, she said, you got a letter delivered. Here. She handed me a small envelope addressed to Claire Reynolds, owner. I opened it. Inside was a gift certificate, a full-day spa treatment. No note, no sender name, but I didn't need one. I folded the certificate and tucked it into my purse. I didn't plan on using it right away, but one day I would, because I'd earned it, and for the first time in a very long time, I was choosing something for myself. The wedding was over, the silence had spoken, and I was still standing.